with the KBLA Talk 1580 editorial. I'm Tavis Smiley, and as always, we welcome your feedback.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show, KBLA Talk 1580. What a fascinating conversation between Tavis Smiley and Congressman Jim Clyburn from South Carolina. Fascinating. The first date. I just bought the book. The esteemed South Carolina lawmaker honors his predecessors. South Carolina is the state that gave rise to the Civil War 3 days after Abraham Lincoln was elected president. Its legislature passed a resolution calling his election a hostile act because he was against enslavement. Weeks later, South Carolina seceded from the Union, followed by 11 more southern states that then formed a rebel government declaring itself the Confederate States of America and triggered war. After 4 bloody years and 700,000+ deaths, the Confederacy surrendered. More than 4 million enslaved Black people were set free, and Reconstruction began despite the Black codes enacted to limit the rights of those freed. Since then, 153 African Americans have served in the U.S. House of Representatives, including 9 from South Carolina, giving rise to this book, The First 8, a personal history of the pioneering Black congressman who shaped a nation, by Jim Clyburn. The 6th Congressional District is only a bit of the Democratic blue sky through in the Republican Palmetto State, and it's represented by James Enos Clyburn, Dean of the state's congressional delegation. Clyburn is the first Black man to represent his state in Congress since 1897. He's been reelected every term since 1992 and served as Majority Whip under Speaker Nancy Pelosi. He became a presidential power broker in 2020 when he endorsed Joe Biden in the South Carolina Democratic primary, giving Biden the momentum to capture the nomination and later win the presidency. Biden rewarded Clyburn in 2024 with the Presidential Medal of Freedom. An extraordinary history, an extraordinary piece of literature, an extraordinary contribution to the history of the United States. The First 8 by Jim Clyburn, available right now on Amazon.com. I just bought it a few minutes ago. But I want everyone to think just for a moment with me before we begin our show on imagine what it's like, Lewis, to have access to these men and women who lived the history of the United States, who lived the history of our story to have representatives in, ideally, a free government. Jim Clyburn is a significant part of that history. And in this moment, I'm also reflecting upon the history of someone else who's particularly important to me, the Reverend Jesse Jackson. Jesse Jackson is also a very important part of that history. In large measure, Tavis asked the question just before Jim left him on the show. He said, how do we get from the First 8 and Jim Clyburn being the 9th all the way to you today? And it would require until in 1956, Rosa Parks staying on that bus in Birmingham, Alabama, in Montgomery, that Emmett Till was on her mind. And then in that context, Martin Luther King Jr. comes to rescue her. And it is in that context that Martin Luther King wins the Montgomery bus boycott after having our community united behind an effort to break down the iron walls of segregation in that community and spread the movement across the South and across the country to end legalized segregation. It would be in that context, around 1963, that, of course, Martin Luther King, that march called the March for Jobs and Justice. Martin Luther King Jr. received an invitation to speak at that march, And at that march for jobs and justice, he gave the I Have a Dream speech, forever changing the course of the history of that moment as well. The 64 Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act of 1965, John Lewis, Jimmy Lee Jackson, James Orange, and others who made the voting rights possible. Viola Lorenzo, James Reeb lost their lives. And from that time forward, it gave birth to African Americans and congressional representatives in Congress, largely because of Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act and largely because of Section 5. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You're listening to the Jesse. We'll talk about that a little bit and talk about what we're going to do and what's going next. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You're listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
While you're stuck in traffic, we can at least bring you up to speed on the news of the day. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. only on KBLA Talk 1580.
Target brings more taste, more flavor, and more deals to your Thanksgiving table. Save big on affordable holiday crowd pleasers, like select elevated sides and appetizers from Good and Gather for only $4.99. Favorite day pies for a sweet finishing touch, also just $4.99. And don't forget, great tasting turkey for only 79 cents a pound. So many cravings, so many ways to save. Step into the holidays and elevate your Thanksgiving today. Only at Target. Restrictions apply.
We're with Bridget, whose husband won't be home for months, and whose daughter is due any day. We're with Mike, who's leaving home to protect his family and yours. We're with all service members and their families who need community, connection, and maybe a bit of magic. Are you with them? Learn more at uso.org today.
Hey, KBLA 1580 delegation, your health matters to us. We know that information is power, especially when it comes to prevention and treatment. That's why we're proud to introduce the brand new KBLA Health and Wellness Hub. This online space is built just for you, connecting our community to trusted health resources, culturally relevant care, and even access to diverse clinical trials and emerging therapies. Whether you're looking for information on common conditions, mental health support, or just want to stay on top of your wellness journey, we got you. And the best part, it's all on our website at KBLA1580.com. Accessible, empowering, community focused. So just go to KBLA1580.com and click on the Health and Wellness Hub icon, because knowledge is power and your health is everything. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
As a mom, comforting my family is what I do best. Vicks Vapor Stick provides soothing, non-medicated Vicks Vapors in an easy-to-apply stick, and it dries fast, so there's no mess. I use it to comfort myself and my family.
Thanks, Mom.
Vicks Vapor Stick, soothing comfort for the whole family. And try Vicks Vapor Shower Max for steamy Vicks Vapors when you need more comfort for yourself.
Care plans change from one year to the next. And this year, it's important for you to review your current coverage and compare all your options during Medicare open enrollment. Compare health plans, drug coverage, and costs. See if you can save some money, and don't forget to make sure your drugs are covered. Open enrollment ends December 7th. Visit Medicare.gov or call 1-800-MEDICARE.
Paid for by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. I woke up quite early this morning to a text message that I received from GB, the Grand Basileus of Omega Psi Phi, my fraternity, Omega Psi Phi, and it was announcing that he was the guest speaker at the rededication of our fraternity today on the anniversary of the fraternity at Howard University. I'm grateful for the GB sending me that flyer. I'm grateful for the history of our organization. I want to talk about our organization for just a moment. I know that Ernest Krim, my favorite millennial, is going to be joining me in the conversation. And Ernest, when we come forward, I want to talk about James Farmer for just a moment, who was an American civil rights activist and leader in the civil rights movement, who pushed the nonviolent protest to dismantle segregation and served alongside Martin Luther King Jr. In 1942, he was co-founder of what became known as CORE, or the Congress of Racial Equality. He was initiator and organizer of the first Freedom Ride in 1961, which eventually led to the desegregation of interstate transportation in the United States. We're now going to play our clip on James Farmer. And while we wait for our clip on James Farmer, Ernest, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. How are you?
Thanks again for having me, brother, for such an important conversation and anniversary.
You know, when I think about members of the Divine Nine and the African American sororities and fraternities that really have their foundation at the end of the 19th century and at the beginning of the 20th century, these organizations of college-educated men and women who came to the forefront of one, brotherhood and sisterhood, and organizing themselves on college campuses, largely around academic thought, academic uplift, and progress for African Americans, while finding themselves oftentimes, initially at historically Black colleges and universities, but the same fraternities and sororities that find themselves located as chapters on predominantly white institutions or PWIs. These organizations become a refuge of culture, of hope, of scholarship, of community and togetherness, that in these organizations, whether segregation is de facto, in fact, or de jure, by custom and by practice, they find themselves needing community, and they find themselves in these organizations to the betterment, quite frankly, of all people, because fraternities and sororities are not something new on college campuses. Your thoughts, Ernest Krim, about the founding, my particular fraternity, but fraternities and the idea of organizations on college campuses like this generally. Ernest Krim.
I think about this in the framework of the scholarship that the Brothers of Omega Psi Phi added to our community with their members, and the fact that I wouldn't be where I am without that contribution. You think about brothers like Dr. Carter G. Woodson, of course. You know, it'll be 100 years next February when we talk about Negro History Week, which eventually became Black History Month. I think about the fact that when I first went to college, I had no idea about these great fraternities and sororities because I did not have that lineage in my family. But I quickly learned just how important these Black fraternities and sororities were to who we are as people, especially on PWIs and, of course, HBCUs as well. I think about the fact that you have so many prominent members, for instance, such as James Farmer, someone who does not get enough credit for his contributions to us, not starting in the 60s, where we usually pick up this conversation of civil rights, but long before then. I think about the fact that without the Brothers of Omega Psi Phi, we don't have a vital part of organizing, because unlike white fraternities, and I learned this when I went to school at U of I, these organizations were started with justice in mind as a safe haven for us. And I think it's important to remember them for just that reason, because as we move forward, we cannot organize efficiently without being a part of organizations.
You know, I think about Jim Clyburn, who was Tavis's previous guest, member of Omega Psi Phi. I think about Jesse Jackson, obviously. I think about my father at this hour, but at all hours, quite frankly, and a member of Omega Psi Phi. I think about Martin Luther King Jr., a member of Alpha Phi Alpha Incorporated. I think about the brotherhood. In many cases, Ernest, these young African-American men and women, many of whom did not have brothers and sisters, did not have, if you will, collegiate fraternal relationships with people in the community. When they joined the fraternity themselves, they came unto a sense of understanding of what it was to have a brother, I shared that when I was the guest speaker at the fraternity during our conclave in New Orleans a few short years ago. My producer is waving at me. We have our clip ready. The clip on James Farmer.
I'm Chesley McNeil, and this is your Omega Minute. Brother James Leonard Farmer Jr. emerged as a titan of civil rights, cutting his teeth as one of the great debaters at Wiley College under the mentorship of Brother Melvin B. Tolson, Beta Chapter 1920. It was at the same school that Brother Farmer was initiated into the Omega Psi Phi fraternity through Theta Chapter in 1936 at the age of 16. In the 1940s, alongside of Brother Bayard Rustin, Brother Farmer co-founded the Congress of Racial Equality, or CORE, an organization that would become a cornerstone in a fight against racial discrimination through its adherence to nonviolent direct action, inspired by the principles of Mahatma Gandhi. As the national director of CORE, Brother Farmer would lead one of the most impactful demonstrations of the movement known as the Freedom Rides. But it didn't come without sacrifice. The first attempt came in 1947 when members of CORE decided to test the Supreme Court ruling that segregation of passengers crossing state lines represented an undue burden on interstate commerce, and that state laws demanding segregation of passengers on interstate motor carriers would be unconstitutional. The Executive Committee of CORE and the Racial Industrial Committee of the Fellowship of Reconciliation decided they should jointly sponsor a journey of reconciliation through the Upper South in order to determine the extent to which bus and train companies were recognizing the court's decision and test nonviolent tactics against Jim Crow laws. These trips took place between April 9th and 23rd as a group of interracial men traveled to 15 cities in North Carolina, Virginia, Tennessee, and Kentucky. The travelers consisted of 8 black men and 8 white men in a group that drew from college students, social workers, members of the Fellowship of Reconciliation, musicians, CORE, ministers, scientists, science workers of Defense League, and the Chicago Council Against Racial and Religious Discrimination. Several arrests were made and fines were given after trials. All convictions were appealed. The lack of confrontation, however, resulted in little media attention and failed to recognize CORE's goals for the rides. 14 years later, in a new national context of sit-ins, boycotts, and the emergence of organizations like the Southern Christian Leadership Conference and the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, or SNCC for short, the rides were reignited. This time known as the Freedom Rides, buses loaded in Washington, D.C., headed toward New Orleans with the hopes of not only integrating interstates, but ending Jim Crow laws in bus terminals. By the time the Freedom Rides reached the Deep South, they were met with intense violence. Buses were firebombed. Freedom Riders were beaten, at times severely beaten. The violence that erupted in response captured national attention. Blacks across the nation joined the civil rights struggle, as did whites in America and abroad. Within months, Attorney General Robert Kennedy issued an order banning segregation in interstate travel, followed by the Interstate Congress Commission ruling that segregation on interstate buses and facilities was illegal. Brother Farmer and CORE had pioneered tactics that eventually dismantled segregation in the South. Brother Farmer described the Freedom Rides as his proudest achievement, a sentiment that reflects the profound impact of these actions on the course of American history. Under his leadership, CORE continued to be a formidable force in the civil rights struggle, engaging in voter registration drives and various other initiatives furthered the cause of equality. The story of Brother Farmer and countless other Omega men who stood on the front lines of the civil rights movement are not just chapters in the fraternity's history, they are integrated into the narrative of America's journey towards justice and equality. Their courage, wisdom, and unwavering commitment to the fight for civil rights continues to inspire us and live up to the ideals of our beloved fraternity. For a deeper dive of these remarkable Omega men and their impact on our nation, I encourage you to delve into the new Omega Psi Phi history book, With Faith in God and Heart and Mind, a history of the Omega Psi Phi fraternity.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Ernest, in this moment, when Tavis raised the question that there were 95 years between the 8th South Carolinian to be elected to Congress and the 9th, which was himself when he was elected in 1992, the intervening 95 years was terrorism. It was Jim Crow. It was unprecedented lynching, litmus tests, jelly bean counting. You have to vote on the second floor, and it is illegal for you as an African American to catch the elevator or use the stairways. What kind?
Unbelievable.
How am I going to get to the second floor if it is illegal for me to use the stairs and illegal for me to catch the elevator? Okay, that's just great. So blacks don't vote. That's what happened between those intervening 95 years until the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. For the Crim?
And I think what's also important to talk about too and bring light to is the fact that during that time, what makes his election possible is this direct action, this activism that James Farmer led and was engaged in. It wasn't just that things got better with time. And that's a notion that we have to continue to grapple with. Things don't get better with time. And in fact, in American history, with the leadership we've had, we found that things get worse with time. And inevitably, when I'm listening to, I was listening to John Oliver today, and they were talking about public broadcasting or whatever, and they were showing like Mr. Rogers at a congressional hearing in 1969 and how he was able to secure funding based on what he talked about was needed and why his show was important. And John Oliver was like, that could never happen today. And that's an epiphany that we have to realize. The leaders we had then on federal level, presidential and otherwise, they were in many ways more progressive then. So the question we have to grapple with then, how do we force that? We look at people within that gap that you talk about that were actively working, because oftentimes if we don't see the immediate result of their activism in that time period, we don't often appreciate what they did. But every brick that was laid with these organizations that were founded, like Omega Psi Phi, like CORE, helped contribute to where we are at today. And I think what's interesting to me and what's upsetting is I would unfortunately say that most kids in school today in America, regardless of background, could not point out James Farmer if they had his picture up. They couldn't point out what CORE was and their contribution. And without understanding who those folks were, we cannot continue to do that work at a higher level.
You know, Ernest, at its core, these organizations and many more like them that may not be Greek letter were organizations that came into existence in resistance to the treatment of people in the South. So much of that after 64, 65 and the public accommodations legislation, this generation has really only known the social organizations. But at the same time, we now see a return to their political activism, for example, not only in Jesse Jackson's campaigns, but in the campaigns of Barack Obama, the campaigns of Joe Biden, the campaign of Kamala Harris. We see a resurgence of these organizations returning to their roots. Ernest, we have a little bit less than a minute.
And what I think is very important about that is you speak a lot to, I think it's an element of accountability. Without without this political aspect, without these political organizations, there is no one to hold politicians accountable. Otherwise, when they secure power, then they'll just, especially in this time period, acquiesce to the lobbyists and to the people who are donating them. But they have to acquiesce and bend to the will of the people. And that cannot be done through an individual. It has to be done with proper organizing. And I think this time period is calling for a resurgence of that right now.
It's Moving Mountain Mondays on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Our regular contributor, Ernest Krim, my favorite millennial, is our guest. We have more on what's going on in the news and around the country at this pivotal hour in our nation's history. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You're listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580 with our very special guest, Ernest Krim.
The biggest names, the best conversations. You're riding with Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Amber Payton with BIN News Now. Former NFL star Antonio Brown appeared in court Monday on attempted murder charges after a shooting outside a Miami boxing match.
We've entered a not guilty plea, demanded trial by jury.
His attorney says it was self-defense. If convicted, Brown faces at least 20 years. The next hearing is December 22nd. Reverend Jesse Jackson's family is denying reports that he's on life support in a Chicago hospital. They say Jackson is stable, breathing on his own, and under care for progressive supranuclear palsy, a rare neurological disorder that affects movement, balance, and eye control. And rapper Nicki Minaj will join the Trump administration to address the United Nations in New York on Tuesday, speaking out against violence toward Christians in Nigeria. Her appearance was arranged following her public praise of Trump's stance on Nigeria. Get BIN News now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
It's the Black Friday of all Black Fridays now at Big O Tires. Buy 3, get 1 free on select tires with paid installation. Or get 50% off a full synthetic oil change and 20% off any repair service. It's Black Friday now through December 7th at your local Big O Tires.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
A couple of highlights and one lowlight from the Rams and Chargers games on Sunday. When Rams wide receiver Devontae Adams caught a 1-yard touchdown pass from quarterback Matthew Stafford, it was the 1,000th career catch for Adams in his 11-year career. Stafford's 2 touchdown passes yesterday gives him 27 this season, tops in the NFL. As for the lowlight, the Chargers gave up a season-high 192 yards rushing at Jacksonville and 4 rushing touchdowns. The Chargers got manhandled at the line of scrimmage. Fortunately for the Chargers, the 192 yards rushing is not the most allowed by a team this season. The Carolina Panthers gave up 374 yards rushing to the New York Giants on October 12th. Top 5 college football teams in this week's top 25 rankings: Ohio State, Tabitha Smiley's Indiana Hoosiers, Texas A&M, Georgia, and Mississippi. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
I'm Reverend Gerald, the life coach. Is someone you love struggling with addiction and mental illness? Is improving your family's health important? Want to leave a legacy that your family can grow? Are you ready to enhance your perception of life experiences? Then wake up weekends at 7 a.m. with Urban Family Focus and get the wisdom, opportunity, resources, and motivation to live your best life. Join the conversation on Urban Family Focus Saturday and Sunday at 7 a.m.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
Established in 2020 during a time of deep racial unrest across our state and country, those to the issues impacting our communities know best how to solve them. That's why in just the last 5 years, we've granted more than $45 million to over 200 grassroots organizations across California. That is the largest collective investment in Black organizing in history, and we're just getting started. We are clear-eyed and committed, more now than ever, to our people, our power, and our possibility. Join us in creating a future where Black people harness their full power to shape their lives and realize a just world for all. Learn more at fundblackfreedom.org. That's fundblackfreedom.org. The Black Freedom Fund is proud to sponsor Conversation Live Altadena Rising with James Farr on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is a special alert to all Americans who own a vehicle with less than 200,000 miles with an auto warranty about to expire or with no warranty coverage at all. Due to a decline in the economy, CarShield is announcing a low-cost month-to-month vehicle protection plan that is now available to the public to save any driver out-of-pocket expenses on future auto repairs. Call now to find out how you can pay almost nothing for covered auto repairs. Yes, you heard that correctly. Pay almost nothing for covered auto repairs. An open phone line has been established for all drivers to call for a free quick quote. Call 800-478-6430 now. Drivers who are covered will not have to pay for covered repairs again. This protection plan is at an all-time low. Additionally, drivers who activate this vehicle protection today will also receive free roadside assistance, free towing, and car rental options at no additional cost. Call us for your free quick quote today. 800-478-6430. That's 800-478-6430. What do you have to lose? Call 800-478-6430. Again, 800-478-6430.
You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. Thank you very much for coming forward with us at this hour. I want to take this a moment before we return to our conversation just to thank the overwhelming number of people who've sent prayers to my father and to my family during this very trying time. I'm burning a candle on both ends of the wick because I spend the evenings with him in the third shift at the hospital, and I'm proud that he's making some progress. I want to thank very special way the mayor of the city of Chicago, Mayor Brandon Johnson, has stopped by. Reverend Al Sharpton was there this morning. Mignon Moore, Yolanda Caraway, Alicia Green, Angel Green, the Colored Girls have all stopped by. Jeanette Wilson, Dr. Iva Crothers. I was leaving the hospital this morning, and Dr. Granger and Joanne Browning from Baltimore, Maryland were in the lobby and ushered them upstairs. Hulsey Matthews came all the way in from Johannesburg, South Africa, and people are just pouring in. The response and their recognition of the work of Jesse Jackson has been broad. It has been overwhelming, and our family is extremely grateful. In an interesting kind of way, my dad's energy is so tied to the people that are around him. I think he draws strength from that energy. And the last couple of days, he's been very animated. But now he's also very, very tired. And so we're going to let him get his rest. But thank you all for your prayers, for your presence, for being there in this particular hour of our family's need. And Jesse Jackson might be the one unifying force within our community, and maybe because of your prayers within our nation, that the entire nation needs at this hour. Grateful for his continued life, service, and contribution. With that said, I want to play another clip right now on Omega Sci-Fi, a fraternity my father was particularly proud of, a debate that took place over Malcolm X. Gina?
I'm Chesley McNeil, and this is your Omega Minute. The Brothers of Pi chapter of the Omega Psi Phi fraternity were successful in getting one of the most polarizing figures of the 1960s to come to the campus of then Morgan State College. Public spokesman for the Nation of Islam, Minister Malcolm X. No small feat.
That's why I say we lit a spark. And the whole campus was ablaze, man, in terms of knowing that Malcolm was coming. And we were very excited about that.
The whole city of Baltimore was excited. I think we had calculated that if the debate was scheduled for Murphy Auditorium. And I think we had calculated that if we get half the place filled up, it would be successful. We had a turn-away people. It was a turn-away crowd.
The brothers wanted it to be a debate, integration versus separation, and they knew the perfect person who would be up for the challenge.
We had teachers who looked like us, but we also had teachers like that didn't have much to think of us.
Dr. Myers was a history professor, and I was a student in his class. He had written several articles about blacks and black colleges, and so I viewed him as being one of those white professors who was an expert on blacks. He was eccentric.
Dr. Meyer was somewhat strange at times. And he would come in the classroom, sit on the desk, and change his shoes and socks in front of the class. And one day we were talking, and he made a statement that he knew more about the black people than we knew about ourselves because he had a background in African-American history. That's what he said.
That fueled the spark for the debate. The event was held March 28, 1962 at the Carl Murphy Fine Arts Auditorium on the campus of Morgan College. The building held roughly 1,400 seats, and as Brother Abney mentioned, there was standing room only.
I remember Malcolm showing up late. I remember the audience being seated and the auditorium was packed. And Malcolm came in late. He came in through the back door with an entourage.
it didn't seem like a debate to me. It seemed like they had that. Malcolm made a speech. It seemed that, as I remember.
I remember one statement. I don't remember what it was, but it was something Dr. Myers said, trying to get the upper hand. And the audience essentially booed him.
Although each of the brothers' reflection from the event differs, most of them will tell you that Malcolm X came out on top. But they also had a ton of respect for Dr. Myers for participating and says he made a lot of good points. It's a moment they say they will never forget, and no doubt, one of the greatest moments in Pi Chapter history.
So I think Malcolm brought us, and that even on the campus, Morgan, I think it brought light to the campus of Morgan to look at ourselves not just as Negroes, but a part of an international community of people, and that we had a part in this whole process.
Malcolm X's appearance at Morgan State College would be his only one at an HBCU. Sadly, 3 years after this event, Malcolm was gunned down while speaking at a ballroom in Harlem, New York.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Ernest, an amazing moment at that particular chapter of Omega Psi-Phi where, if you will, the liberal white instructor who probably knew more than the 17 and 18 or even 16-year-old students who were entering college for the first time about African-American history. He had been reading his books. He had studied his scholarship. He had lived some life. And I'm sure that was in and of itself a challenge for new, young African-Americans in college actually being exposed to scholastic research on the history of Black people. But then this debate occurs between Minister Malcolm X and Dr. Myers, in the form within which some of the living people who were there were sharing with us. And clearly the crowd was moved by a Black man who knew his own history. He knew his own stuff. That transition from the scholastic involvement of white folks telling us about ourselves and the leadership of Malcolm X, James Farmer, Jesse Jackson, Martin Luther King Jr., and others, Benjamin Elijah Mays, Howard Thurman, these men who were bringing that real smoke must have made a difference.
Oh, for sure. You know, this reminds me of, I've told a close friend of mine after leaving the class a few years ago that I feel like I'm more equipped to teach history now that I've left and have had to live what I taught about for so many years. I think I'm more equipped now than I was when I graduated. And I say that because, in all honesty, it's a bit foolish to have a 22-year-old teaching history. Because when you think about it, the only thing I can really offer is the book knowledge, what I've read. I haven't really lived, right? What you've experienced, what your father has experienced, what the small portion of what I've experienced in my life is now of greater value than somebody coming fresh out of college. And I'd equate that to what you just brought up, because there is value in having someone who, of course, is well-studied, and of course, somebody even outside of our community that has humbled themselves enough to try to learn about our experience. But you can't equate that to somebody who has really lived through it, like a brother like Malcolm. And I think that's what we heard about and what those brothers, of course, saw on display in that moment. I think a couple things stand out to me about that. One, Malcolm was late, which I ain't gonna lie, I was shocked to hear that. Malcolm seemed like the type of dude to show up an hour early. So something must have happened. Something must have happened. In addition to that, if y'all can see this video, I was shocked to see that some of those brothers crossed in the 1960s, because they look like they ain't barely even 60 yet. and beyond that, Malcolm, true to form, he didn't come to debate. It kind of reminds me of what John Henry Clark says, like, I only debate my equals. To all others, I'm teaching. So Brother Malcolm came there to say, ain't really nothing you can convince me on. You're about to get this intellectual whipping, and everybody's gonna see it, and they're gonna be talking about it 60 some odd years later. So I think it's dope that the brothers of Omega Psi-Phi were able to witness something like that, and also too, just the idea that you don't have to be a part of my organization. You don't have to be to follow the traditional steps of going through college as we expect you to acquire knowledge to add something of value to who we are as people into organizations that were started in college.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You're listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. More with Ernest Krim III when we come forward.
While you're stuck in traffic, we can at least bring you up to speed on the news of the day. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. only on KBLA Talk 1580.
We asked seniors how to prevent Medicare scams.
My best advice, if you get a phone call, do not talk to the person. These people are well trained. Don't talk to them.
They don't know me. They're just trying to scam me.
Don't be fooled. Hang up. Just hang up.
Never give out your Medicare number.
They're going to get your number to put in a false claim.
If I get a call from someone, I don't pick up the phone. And should I pick up the phone and they ask for information, then I hang up.
How do you detect Medicare fraud?
Just like I check my credit card statements, I check my Medicare statements monthly.
Scammers can get a hold of your number, order medical devices through your account, and you're not even going to know about it if you don't look at your statement.
Check your statement every month. If you get your statement and you see something that you know you did not have done, you report it.
Call your senior Medicare Patrol.
To report Medicare fraud, call the Senior Medicare Patrol at 855-613-7080.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 is committed to self-care and community well-being. Walk Good LA was formed in June 2020, inspired by the Black Lives Matter movement and the beginning stages of the COVID-19 pandemic. What began as a few minutes of breath work and yoga meditation before protests against police brutality turned into a safe space for the community to heal in hard times. The immensely positive response from the community transformed the momentum into a movement. Today, Walk Good LA is a Black and Brown-led community wellness organization based in Los Angeles. They provide spaces for healing through community yoga classes, guided meditations, hikes, run clubs, and other activations throughout Los Angeles that attract hundreds of members weekly. With the help of Propel and Michael B. Jordan, they now have a yoga and wellness studio in Los Angeles called the Walk Good Yard. To join their mailing list and connect with healing spaces, please visit walkgoodla.org. That's walkgoodla.org. Or find them on Instagram at walkgoodla. This is a community call to action, a community call to healing from KBLA Talk 1580.
Nationwide is so much more than a great insurance company. They're one of America's largest financial services companies. Like how I'm more than Saquon Barkley, the NFL's reigning leading rusher. I'm also the NFL's leading husher. Shh, hush up back there. Wow, I might have just set the hushing record. Well, almost. For your insurance and financial needs, Nationwide is on your side.
Nationwide Investment Services Corporation, member FINRA, Columbus, Ohio.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 15. Ernest. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Ernest is my favorite millennial. He's a producer, he's a writer, he's a historian, a 4-time Emmy-nominated producer, historian, and thinker. Ernest, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Thanks again for having me, brother.
Ernest, I want to pivot very quickly to an important subject matter that is reeling the nation at this hour. We can't escape it. I don't think any radio show or conversation can escape the impact of the release of these emails, knowing that this is something we need to explore at greater length at another time. The impact of the release of these emails are as challenging to the government as the shutdown itself. Ernest, your thought about some of what we're hearing coming out of the release of some of these emails and these files?
I think one of the most troubling things on the surface is we already knew this, but the American public still decided to elect this person in office. I think it's also important to understand that, it's likely that we're going to see folks from both parties implicated in this. And I think that's something that we have to be aware of and be honest about. It's not to implicate the entire party, but it's to say that we have some bad faith actors, inside of the Democratic Party as well. I think that what Donald Trump is doing, I put this in a video recently, is when he said make America great again, we have to understand all aspects of that. And some of the folks were so caught up in their whiteness and maybe even their male chauvinism that they were only able to see what they thought he represented as a bigot, as a racist, right? This is also what he meant. This is something, the things that he allegedly, right, engaged in are things that at one point in time in American history were not things that would bring shame to a president or an elected official. I mean, we could just go back to Thomas Jefferson. Think about that, right? There are various other presidents who are open about how they completely, how they sexually assaulted women, particularly enslaved Black women, entire families. Some even documented this in their journals. So to me, when I hear that call of MAGA, I also hear him attempting to, just by his very presence, make that appear okay. I've scrolled past pages where people are talking about how some of his supporters are attempting to justify this in some form. So this is the decision a lot of folks have to make right now, especially those who have been parading him and have been in this cheering section since he got elected again. You can make the decision to blindly follow him and continue down this path of being a follower of a cult leader, or you can be, and I hate to even have to use this person as an example, but you can be like Marjorie Taylor Greene in that particular instance. That's it. Don't be like her in any other way, but you can speak out. And without that, it's scary to see where we can go. And really what I'm saying is it's scary to see where we will be going back. I think the fact that more recently he said that he was signed off on the release is, I don't want to say a complete distraction, but I think it's a political strategy where he's attempting to kind of make it seem like it's not a big deal, when in fact it really is.
I mean, it's clear that Donald Trump has some issues, that he's some kind of deviant, and it just is what it is. I think what's shocking to me the most is that, we've had Democratic administrations. We've had administrations that have appointed attorneys general who were Democrat. And there have been U.S. attorneys over these cases who served under Democratic administrations as well. And, these lists, reveal a behavior and a cadre of people, as you correctly stated, on both sides that have, participated in something kind of nefarious here. And that's an understatement. And their justice departments didn't bring actions against these people. They didn't go forward against these people, raising the ire of whether or not some of the prosecutions have been selective, whether they have fallen on certain individuals who are at the forefront of the national conversation regarding emails. But the conversations regarding some other celebrated voices, we've simply not heard them. And Democratic administrations had the opportunity to share that information with the American public as well. And those people, there's no other way to look at it, were protected. They were protected from shame, from blame, from guilt, from resentments and regrets, from the destruction of their public personas and their reputations in the public space. If every man and woman who went through the criminal justice system had the same kind of protections in the public space for the things they did not do, well, America might be just a little bit different. People might not need to be pardoned for their problems. But when the government allows nefarious conversations to take place, true or not true, hides the emails of some people, puts other people's emails in the public and their lives in the public, I mean, I find that disturbing. And I find it disturbing having lived on both sides of it. Ernest?
What I reflect on a lot too is just this idea of white accountability. It's just something that is not a pattern in political circles. You think about the precedence it sets for somebody who these conversations were already made public on the campaign trail. People were already aware of this, 2015, now 2025. And it begs the question, especially for those in the white community, is when do you begin to hold yourselves accountable for where we are? When we talk about folks like James Farmer and other leaders within Omega Psi Phi over the past hour, we speak of people who were attempting to hold this country accountable and to simply do what's right. It's really simple. You know, I posted a video over this weekend talking about how a white pastor who, Bruce Clunder, who laid down in front of a bulldozer to protest school segregation in Cleveland in the 60s. And the comment I made was he got normalized by being exposed to the Montgomery bus boycotts and not radicalized. We often say that as like you're an outlier. We have people who were trying to normalize the country into being for the things it said it was for in the 1700s. So on the other side, we have people who have tried to justify deviancy for so long, and it projected that on us for the longest. So like the future of this country in many ways rests within their hands. When do you draw the line and say enough is enough? We cannot continue to follow this person, and we cannot continue to try to justify what he did and others simply because we want to hold on to this perception of power.
And that's exactly what I think is taking place. They sweep under the rug certain things that they don't want people to know about themselves. And you end up without the complete transparency, and somehow in the process, faith is lost in the government, certainly lost in our leaders and our way of providing leadership for the American people on issues that are critical to what they want to talk about, to what they're experiencing, and to what they're feeling. I think when it's all out there, and you, as Howard Thurman would say, when your back is against the wall, you have nothing else to hide, you have nothing else to show, then I think a space for authenticity emerges. And I think that this reckoning that the American people are now experiencing at the highest levels of their government is a reckoning that's taking place in every household, every community, every neighborhood in the United States about our future. What kind of world do we want to build? What kind of future do we want to see? And what kind of people do we want to be? Ernest, we have about 2 minutes before we come forward. A final word of hope for our audience.
I think my final word of hope has to rest upon what we opened this show with, and it's the importance of organizing, but in particular, shining the focus on the brothers of the Omega Psi Phi fraternity. I think when we mention in this moment the commonly quoted adage of get organized, we have to remember the key part of that is organ, bodily function. Every part of the body serves a function so that you can prosper. So in order for us to do what we need to do in this moment, we have to be a part of an organization. We have to speak to our children about the importance of proper etiquette and morals in leadership, and to follow behind people who best personify that. I think in this moment, when we think about how corrupt the government is, we only can speak of what people have added to that. The government is corrupt because the people go into that with that mindset. So how can we better raise young children to be leaders and to be the antithesis of what we have now? We hold that power in our hands right now, and it starts with them following behind proper men and women who possess these attributes.
This is Moving Mountain Mondays on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Up next will be our very special regular contributor, Dr. Terry Hord Owens, the President and General Minister of the Disciples of Christ Church here in the United States and Canada. Ernest, thank you for being on the show this week, brother.
Thanks again for having me, brother.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. More on KBLA Talk 1580 when we come forward with Teresa Hord Owens.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Amber Payton with BIN News Now. Former NFL star Antonio Brown appeared in court Monday on attempted murder charges after a shooting outside a Miami boxing match.
We've entered a not guilty plea, demanded trial by jury.
His attorney says it was self-defense. If convicted, Brown faces at least 20 years. The next hearing is December 22nd. Reverend Jesse Jackson's family is denying reports that he's on life support in a Chicago hospital. They say Jackson is stable, breathing on his own, and under care for progressive supranuclear palsy, a rare neurological disorder that affects movement, balance, and eye control. And rapper Nicki Minaj will join the Trump administration to address the United Nations in New York on Tuesday, speaking out against violence toward Christians in Nigeria. Her appearance was arranged following her public praise of Trump's stance on Nigeria. Get BIN News now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
It's the Black Friday of all Black Fridays now at Big O Tires. Buy 3, get 1 free on select tires with paid installation, or get 50% off a full synthetic oil change and 20% off any repair service. It's Black Friday now through December 7th at your local Big O Tires.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
A couple of highlights and one lowlight from the Rams and Chargers games on Sunday. When Rams wide receiver Devontae